Krillin is a horrible translation. It should be Kuririn. They should have never changed it. If you've been in the English-speaking Dragon Ball fandom for long enough, there's a pretty good chance that you've come across a video or some Reddit post of somebody basically saying what I just said. But is it true? Well, on this edition of Dragon Ball Dictionary, I'm going to answer that question once and for all, and I'm going to dig deep into the origins of Krillin's name. Let's get into it. Hey guys, my name is Tony and I use my knowledge of the Japanese language to break down Dragon Ball and other anime. So if you're into that kind of thing, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Krillin is a fan favorite character, and for good reason. Yeah, he's likable, but he's also really relatable. He's the everyman of the main cast of characters. He's not the one in an endless pursuit for strength, and he's not a god or anything like that. He's just a regular guy who gets scared, doubts himself, and is looking for a wife and wants to just have a happy life. So we all love Krillin, but we're not here to talk about who Krillin is as a character. We're here to talk about his name. As I said in the intro, Krillin's Japanese name is Kuririn. Now, I am going to be talking about the pronunciation of Krillin's Japanese name, but first, I want to get into the origins of his name because there's a lot to say here, and it's a little bit more complicated than you might be thinking. Basically, it's thought that Krillin's name comes from a combination of the Japanese word for chestnut, which is kuri, and the Japanese word for Shaolin, which is shorin. The chestnut thing is a reference to Krillin's bald head, and the Shaolin thing is a reference to Krillin's background and appearance because, well, he's dressed like a Shaolin monk when he first appears, and the place where he was training before Master Roshi is Orin Temple, which is a play on Shorin Temple, which is how you say Shaolin in Japanese. The thing about this explanation is that nobody ever cites anything when they're saying it. They just say it like it's obvious, and yeah, I guess it's kind of obvious, but when possible, it's nice to have some official source, some legit source, or maybe a quote by Toriyama that confirms it. So I started looking around and I came across an interesting quote. So let's get into this one first. I found this quote in the Japanese Wikipedia entry for Krillin, and it's cited as having come from volume 23 of the Dragon Ball manga Tankobon. Unfortunately, I don't have that version of the manga, so I couldn't confirm this myself. If you do, let me know down in the comments. But here's the quote. At first, I didn't intend to make him a regular character. I thought he would be a one-off character, so I just named him in a very haphazard way. Interestingly, the Japanese Wikipedia entry for Krillin uses this quote to say that there is no name origin for Krillin, and other people online also use this quote to say the same thing. But I don't agree with that interpretation because that's not what Toriyama is saying in this quote. In the quote, Toriyama is simply saying that, yeah, he didn't give it much thought, there's not some super deep meaning, and that's it. Everything else we have to speculate about because Toriyama didn't give us much details, and that's often the case with his interviews. They are so frustrating. Okay, so there's that quote, but there's also one more quote that I came across that is relevant. Of course, eventually Krillin ends up with Android 18 and they have a daughter. That daughter is named Maron. Note that the Ma is a long syllable. Krillin's ex-girlfriend is Maron. It has a short Ma. And also, that's filler only. Maron, the ex-girlfriend, was never in the manga. In the Kanzenban official guidebook, Toriyama talks about why he decided to give Krillin's daughter the name Maron. This is the quote. It's simply because she's Krillin's daughter, so I took the name from Maron. In case you're not aware, the French word for chestnut is M-A-R-R-O-N. Marron, I think, maybe?
The fixer at Maman is going to teach us how to make marron glacé, which we could translate as candied chestnut.
So basically, Toriyama confirms here that there is a link between the Japanese word for chestnut and the kuri part of Kuririn. But this does not confirm that when Toriyama created Krillin, he had that chestnut association in his head. Why do I say this? Because there's other possible explanations for Krillin's name. For example, there's the term kurikuri in Japanese. This means big and round, like Krillin's big and round bald head. There's also the phrase kurikuri bozu, which can mean a bald-headed Buddhist monk. kind of like Krillin. So could the terms kurikuri or kurikuri bozu have been in Toriyama's mind when he decided to give Krillin his name? Yes, but I can't confirm that. And then there's the Rin part of Kuririn's name. So yes, it's totally possible that this came from Shaolin. We don't have any confirmation about this, but yeah, it seems very, very plausible. It's also possible that Toriyama was thinking this sounds like a cute name ending, a nice name ending, because Rin is used in mascot character names, in nicknames in Japan. Again, it sounds kind of cute. It's just a nice little, almost like a name suffix. For example, there's quite a few mascot characters whose name ends in Rin. One example is Kuririn, the mascot character for the Kyoto National Museum. There's also quite a few Japanese idols that use the Rin name suffix.
はい。寝ても覚めても雪にワールド夢中にさせちゃうぞ雪にこと柏木由紀です
So for Krillin's Japanese name to end in Rin actually sounds pretty normal in a sense because there's a lot of other characters and people that use this naming convention in Japan. So then what is the name origin of Krillin? Well, actually, I don't have a solid answer. The reality is that yes, it does seem like the kuri part comes from chestnut, but I also can't with 100% certainty say that that isn't a retcon of sorts. It's totally possible that Toriyama just decided to name him Kuririn, and Kuri was actually from Kurikuri or Kurikuri Bozu, and then later he realized, oh, actually, this works with Kuri and chestnut. I don't know. We just do not know. Or maybe it was everything at the same time because none of these contradict each other. Maybe he did think, oh, Shaolin or Shorin, as it's pronounced in Japanese, works as a nice little ending, and Rin actually sounds cute. It's a good name suffix. And then Kuri works on both levels. So maybe all of this is the case, or maybe just Kuri is the case with the whole chestnut thing. We don't know. I'm sorry, this is really unsatisfying, but that is the reality. So yes, the chestnut part of this is true. It's confirmed by Toriyama, but we can't with 100% certainty say that that was always the case. Now, if you have any other evidence that I didn't bring up today, please share it with us. Leave it down in the comments so that we can take a look, and maybe I'll do an update video if you actually show me something that confirms anything that was said or not said today. So let's answer the question, is Krillin a mistranslation? First of all, mistranslation is not a good word to use here. We're actually talking about localization or adaptation, so I'm going to be using those words from here on out. So on a surface level, it seems like the answer to the question would be yes. It's a bad translation, a bad localization, adaptation, whatever, because it's just totally different, right? Krillin looks and sounds totally different from Kuririn. But here's the thing. Even if you were to write it Kuririn, your average American or your average native English speaker would not be able to pronounce it the Japanese way.
Kaori. It's not Kaori. It's not like a carol. It's ka and drop the R again. Kaori.
They would pronounce it Kuririn or something like that. And that sounds totally different from the original Japanese as well. The reality is that there is absolutely no way to write Kuririn in English aside from using like phonetic alphabet that would result in a native English speaker with no knowledge of Japanese being able to pronounce it in the Japanese way. The R's in Kuririn aren't actually R's. They're just the best approximation of the sound that is being used in Kuririn. This is often called a tap R or a flap R.
But Japanese R touch around here.
It is somewhere between an R and an L. Your tongue touches the top, the roof of your mouth very briefly. In some dialects of English, for example, in whatever I speak, I guess some kind of standard American dialect, butter, right? The thing that you spread on your toast, butter actually has this kind of flap R sound, right? Butter, butter, butter. It's the same kind of sound right there in the middle, but that's written with two T's in English. So what, are you going to write kutitin with two T's and two T's? No, because the average American English speaker or speakers around the world aren't going to pronounce it as kuririn. And the E isn't going to be pronounced as an E, it's going to be pronounced as an I by somebody that speaks English and has no knowledge of Japanese. The KU is also probably going to be pronounced as Kuririn or Kuririn. they're not going to pronounce it accurately. So even if you keep the original Japanese romanization, it's just not going to be accurate in terms of how people read it. So the end result is something that is both inaccurate and something that is hard to read and pronounce. Kuririn is harder to pronounce than Krillin. Krillin, on the other hand, I think is a really, really good adaptation. It's really easy to read, it's really easy to pronounce, and even though it's not Kuririn, it's actually very close to the original. I will explain why in just a moment. See, the thing is that localization isn't about translating every single aspect of something in a literal sense. Rather than translating everything literally, what you want to do is keep the intent and preserve as much as possible, but also adapt it in a way that is both easy and enjoyable for the target audience to consume. And that's what I think Krillin is. It's really easy to read, it's really easy to pronounce. Krill and in are two English words that exist, right? Krill are the shrimp-like creatures in the ocean, right? And then in is the word that we use in things like in the house and in the fire and in something, right? This is a common English word. So when a native English speaker that has no knowledge of Japanese sees Krillin, they know how to read it. They know how to pronounce it. There's no confusion there. Yeah, it looks a little bit weird because this isn't an existing name in English, but they're not going to be confused about how to read it or how to pronounce it. Now, there's two other well-known romanizations of Krillin's Japanese name. There's Kuririn, and then there's Krillin, which I believe was also used in the US. Both of these are valid localizations, but I still like Krillin more. The problem with both of these is that they both feel foreign, and I don't necessarily mean this as in having come from another country. I more so mean it in the sense that they look very alien, right? They look like they are not English. They look unfamiliar. It's kind of confusing about how you're supposed to pronounce them, right? Are you supposed to pronounce Kulilin or Kulilin? Or what about Klilin or Kliline or Klilin? There's a little bit of ambiguity there, right? Where there is no ambiguity with Krillin. Like I said, we know how to read that instantly, and when you hear it, you can repeat it right away. But maybe there's somebody out there that still thinks, no, his name is Kuririn. It should have been Kuririn in English. In response to that, I want to talk about the Mighty Thor. Yes, the Marvel character, the Mighty Thor. Now, stick with me here because this is really interesting. In Japan, the Mighty Thor is called Mighty Soul.
Soul, Love and Thunder.
Yes, in Japan, Thor is Soul. And I know that doesn't sound like Thor to the native English speaker with no knowledge of Japanese, but that's what it is, because there is no TH sound in Japanese and there's no R sound in Japanese. So they have to adapt it, well, using the sounds that Japanese has. And so the result was Soul. So especially when you adapt proper names like this, it's totally normal to make changes so that the target audience can actually pronounce it, can actually engage with the media comfortably rather than having to learn another language in order to engage with something that they like. And here's one last thing to close out the video. If I were to write Krillin on a piece of paper and then hand that piece of paper to a Japanese person who is not fluent in English and doesn't know anything about Dragon Ball, and then I tell them, adapt this into Japanese. How would you write this in Japanese / pronounce this in Japanese? You know what they would say? Almost every single Japanese person would probably say Kuririn. In other words, they'd end up back at the Japanese pronunciation of Krillin's name. That's because that is how you would adapt Krillin into Japanese. In case you're not aware, Japanese only has 5 vowel sounds. A, I, U, E, O. And usually these vowel sounds are paired up with a consonant. Well, in the case of Krillin, if you want to adapt that back into Japanese, then you have to decide on what vowel sound you're going to pair with the K sound. So you could end up with Karirin or Keririn or Kiririn or Kuririn or Koririn. But most people would go with Kuririn. For example, the English word thrill is used in Japanese, and when they pronounce it in Japanese, they pronounce it as suriru. This is because there's no TH sound in Japanese, and so they have to find the closest approximation to a TH sound, which is an S sound, and so suriru is what they end up at. And So we go back to Krillin. Kuririn is what they would end up with 9.5 times out of 10, I think, maybe even more. So in the end, we come back to the original Japanese. Even though in English we pronounce it as Krillin, we come back to Kuririn. So to answer the question, is Krillin a mistranslation? No, I don't think it is. Well, first of all, it's not a mistranslation. Would it be a bad localization attempt? No, it's not. I think this is a really, really good adaptation. The reality is that sometimes you got to make changes to the pronunciation in order for the target audience to be able to actually enjoy the content and pronounce it. So I think Krillin is great, but it's totally okay to use the Japanese pronunciation as well. Whatever pronunciation you use, just don't be an asshole about it. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and check out my video about Goku's most famous line. See you in the next one.